This woman only went to the police station to clean, yet she spotted a mistake in the police investigation at a glance. She threw away her lollipop. Her mind began racing, instantly realizing the police had mistaken the victim for the killer. If there's a mistake, it needs to be corrected. She crossed out the suspect's label and wrote victim underneath. She thought it was just a simple gesture, but the next day, David, who was in charge of the case, was furious. After questioning everyone with no one admitting to it, he immediately checked last night's surveillance footage. Lucy's dancing moves were all recorded. The female supervisor warned that interfering with criminal cases could lead to jail time. Lucy looked innocent, saying she was just helping to correct a mistake. How was that interfering with a criminal case? David was angry. He had been a police officer for decades. He didn't need a cleaner telling him how to handle cases. The female supervisor ignored him. Instead, she took out the case files and asked Lucy to explain. Lucy explained. Every piece of furniture in the house was arranged neatly. The entire house and hall were spotlessly clean. This indicated that the woman of the house was a neat person. But strangely, the curtains nearby, originally all tied up neatly with ropes, but the rightmost one was missing a rope. So Lucy deduced. It must have been used elsewhere by the killer. There were traces of binding on the chair. Obviously someone had used tape there and then torn it off, leaving some residual marks. This meant someone had been tied to the chair. But look at the victim's arms, there were no binding marks. Based on these details, there was clearly a third person at the scene. The homeowner was just a victim. This reasoning was flawless. Even experienced David couldn't find fault with it, but he said they needed to check nearby surveillance footage to truly prove there was a third person. But before he finished speaking, his subordinate came with news that proved him wrong. The surveillance showed a woman entering the victim's home. The third person had arrived. However, Lucy had still violated regulations. David ordered his staff to put her in detention, but he couldn't feel happy about it. He had to admit Lucy's reasoning was correct. They had to overturn the entire case and start over, to quickly find the other victim. Fortunately, they found something in the surveillance near the crime scene. An Asian girl had visited the scene on the day of the incident, although the girl repeatedly denied it. Unfortunately, she had no alibi. Just as David and his team were about to name her the prime suspect, Lucy, who was about to sign a confidentiality agreement, just glanced, and immediately noticed this footage wasn't from the day of the crime. David was irritated just seeing her. They had finally made some progress on the case, but the female supervisor didn't mind. Instead, she hoped Lucy could point out what was strange. It turned out the wind in the video should be southeastern, but in this season, the city should have northwestern winds. This footage was clearly from several months ago. As for determining the wind direction in the footage, it was simple. There was a church behind the girl. Historically, priests would have churches face east, so the sun would be behind them, making them appear more godlike. Then by observing the leaves in the footage, one could deduce the wind direction. As for what wind blew yesterday during the crime, everyone should know that, right? The officers looked at each other, unsure if they were being insulted. Lucy didn't care about any of that. She turned to leave immediately. However, the female supervisor suddenly called her back.